I think it is interesting to discuss films. You know, it's something that people often, is a feature of their lives, and that they respond to very powerfully, and they play an important role in our culture. And I think that this time we have really found, you know, we've talked about like the oeuvres of directors. You know, we're zeroing in on one movie this time, but I think that we have found like really something that is quite fitting for subliminal jihad attention. I think that this is quite deserving of our focus here. This is really something.
Yes.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
A lot. The movie we're going to be talking about today is a lot.
Yeah, it's quite a lot. It's basically a celluloid distillation of an incredibly fucked up family with a really outsized financial hold on America and really the world, which is what we mentioned before in the podcast, the Gettys.
Yep, the good old Gettys.
Yeah.
And you know, we have brought them up from time to time, and I was aware of this story and of this film in kind of a vague sense, because I was, you know, this happened in 2015 when I was living in Los Angeles. The director of the film we're getting today, The Evil Within, which was directed by Andrew Getty, the son of Gordon
previously
Getty,
known as the storyteller.
Yes,
not to be confused with the Muppet series.
We'll get maybe to be confused.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, damn.
Okay, yeah. I mean, we'll get into we'll maybe circle through a greatest hits of like the Getty connection, so people really fully appreciate what I guess maybe we both saw humming underneath the surface of this film. But
yeah, it's not subtle. You don't have to like work hard. It's not like, you know, you're looking at Polanski's adaptation of Test Tube Vrills, and you're like, oh, well, you know, there is this motif of sacrifice and like how eerie, you know, where like that I think actually is very striking in a way, but that's very subtle compared to what's going on in this movie. This is really something, and this is like, you know, just to give a quick synopsis of it, or sort of a quick expression of what's going on here, or what's the deal with The Evil Within. Basically, this movie is like 15 years in the making. Like, absolutely. Like, this dude worked on it for 15 years, at least. There's a dude in this movie, Matthew McGorry. There's two like famous horror actors in this movie. One is the guy from The Hills Have Eyes, whose name escapes me right now, but you know, he's famous. Like, you know him. You've seen him in a million horror movies and B-type movies before. But there's another dude, Matthew McGorry, who's like another big sort of horror movie personage who's known for like his huge stature. And he like died in 2005, and this movie came out in 2015, and he is in a scene in the movie towards the end. So this movie definitely has been in the making for a while. And so basically, Andrew Rourke Getty, the son of Gordon Getty, was holed up in his mansion, which used to belong to some composer, which, you know, of course, is kind of consistent with the Gettys' interests in classical music and all that stuff. But, you know, Andrew Rourke Getty, he always was more into film. He went to NYU and things like that. And shortly after graduating, he had this idea for a movie, which, according to him, was based on his own childhood nightmares. And so, yeah, he was working on it consistently. Like, if you look at the credits for this movie, like, I don't know if you watched the full credits, because I wouldn't blame you if you didn't, because, like, when it ended, I was just like, oh, my God, like, get me away from this hell, you know? But, yeah, if you look at the credits, like, every single role, like, has, like, a million people under it. It's, like, first assistant camera operator, like, 2 whole, like, frames are needed to talk about, like, all the people who filled this role through the duration of the movie. Yeah, so he was, sitting in, his house for all this time, like, doing, you know, painstakingly working on this. He created... You know, we'll talk about some of the different props that appear in the movies. There's some intricate props, all of which created himself. He painstakingly made all the effects. And throughout this time, you know, he was just, like, doing a lot of coke, doing meth, like, spiraling downwards. And eventually, before he could really finish the movie, he died in 2015. And he was found by his...
he was under very dark circumstances,
Yes.
which ended up being said of kind of like a complications of an intestinal hemorrhage and heart disease and a methamphetamine overdose. He was found by his on and off kind of ex-girlfriend who called it in.
Yeah, who we had a restraining order against. He had, he had previously gotten a restraining order against her because she, I guess, would just hit him and according to the restraining order that he filed, she would, cause him great stress that was a danger to him due to his heart condition, which he even mentioned in the restraining order.
And his ulcers.
And, that heart condition was theoretically the cause of his death. He had just done, he was just sitting in the bathroom with some unspent shotgun shells all around him.
Yes. Yep.
Bleeding profusely from his rectum.
Yeah. With the original report, I think, from the police said that there was blunt force injury to his rectal area, which is what that's where they brought in the ex-girlfriend for questioning initially, because they didn't rule out that there was some kind of foul play that went on. He also, in addition to the shotgun shells sprinkled around his body, they found, I think, propped up on his bed was a kind of like a rack of surveillance monitors from the CCTV system in his mansion. So he was holed up in there. I can't remember if they said they found a shotgun with him, but it's he was in there with a gun. It's like Scarface or something, just doing meth and cradling his rack of surveillance monitors and stuff, looking out for somebody who was gonna get him or something. It's it's extremely dark, and when we get into kind of the content of this movie, it just gets darker and darker, and we'll even get into kind of the tangential stuff with the Gettys in Los Angeles, with Gordon Getty. There's so much weird. It's
not really
intrigue.
Tangential, because this movie is a family story, and all of this stuff is very much represented, I think, in the film. The movie is not
something is being represented. Something is being represented.
Yes.
Something very fucked up is being hinted, is being gestured at as this. And and it's funny reading back. So this happened in 2015. He died this kind of drug overdose death, and it was kind of in the way whenever a Kennedy dies, before their time.
Or just he had a heart attack or something. He had an ulcer, but methamphetamine use is a contributing factor. He didn't.
Yes, but then articles did start to come out that the more sordid details started coming out more and more in the period of the year or two after he died, that were basically he was really into meth, and he was basically an extreme recluse. He lived right off of Mulholland Drive, up in the Hollywood Hills, and also, might as well bring it up now, but I noticed a Hollywood Reporter article that there were some male human remains that were found on kind of the outer edge of his property, adjacent to a hiking trail.
The skeletal remains of a male transient was found on overgrown property adjacent to his mansion. But they said not supposed to be a connection.
Exactly. But then it's I read that after watching this movie and was ooh.
Exactly. Hard to, what? Yeah.
And, also...
And by the way, that type of thing is not unusual for the Getty family at all. I feel it's more normal to die, in that type of, horrific way where you're, found by someone, days later in some horrible state, usually in some, drug-related manner as a Getty, than to not do that, than to pass away peacefully with all your friends and family around you, of old age.
It is more normal. I'm just looking at the kind of the greatest hits here of Getty tragedies. The J. Paul Getty Jr.'s wife, or J. Paul Getty Jr., the scion who built the family. His son George died in 1973 at age 48 from a mix of barbiturates and alcohol.
Because he was the one who was kidnapped and
no, not that. Wasn't even him. That's a different son.
That's John Paul Getty. Jr.'s son.
And that was his grandson. His grandson was the one who was kidnapped. We'll get to we'll get back to that. But so George died at 48 from a mix of barbiturates and alcohol. Maybe a suicide, maybe an overdose. J. Paul Getty Jr.'s wife, a Dutch actress, died of a heroin overdose in 1971, and the pair's son, J. Paul Getty III, was later kidnapped by the mafia in Rome, who cut off his ear before their ransom demands were accepted, which he famously refused to pay, and so they cut his son's ear. And then J. Paul Getty III had a period of using heavy drugs and had a stroke.
Well, his grandfather, he called his grandfather and asked him to pay, or they called the kidnapped Getty's grandfather, the scion J. Paul Getty, and he refused to pay because then all of his grandchildren would get kidnapped by the mafia, was his excuse,
The 'Ndrangheta.
And also, you just shouldn't negotiate with terrorists, you can't negotiate with terrorists, so... Yeah, so they destroyed his life and drove him insane, and he became a drug too.
Then he had a stroke in 1981, which left him paralyzed, and he died in 2011. So very sad. And also, he did ultimately, I think, as we mentioned in our Opperman episode, they did ultimately negotiate with terrorists because they sent none other than Gavin Newsom's father with the bag full of money to pay off the 'Ndrangheta and basically get J. Paul Getty III back because he was Bill Newsom was the family consigliere for the Gettys, and I think actually grew up. Gordon Getty lived in Bill Newsom's house. He lived with his family when they went to St. Ignatius Prep at the high school together. Because I think at that point maybe J. Paul Getty Jr., the scion, had maybe moved to England or something, and so they left him in San Francisco. And so in a very weird way, it was Gavin Newsom's dad was kind of adopted Gordon Getty a little bit. And was he was part of the Newsom family. And then when Gavin was born, Gordon Getty kind of did the same thing with Gavin. So Gavin ended up getting taken on safaris and trips all around the world and went and hung out with the Getty family. And actually, I wonder, because they're the same generation, how close Gavin Newsom and Andrew Getty were. They must have known each other. I don't know if they specifically were friends. I know Andrew Getty did grow up in San Francisco around the same time. And, so we're talking about a guy who, yes, he's an eccentric heir to, an oil fortune and all these things, but also, deeply plugged in to the California politics structure, both in San Francisco and Los Angeles. And and looking at who's the governor of California right now is Gavin Newsom, who's the vice president, another person who grew up in the same social circle, literally, with Gavin Newsom and these young Gettys. Kamala Harris is now the vice president. So
yes, absolutely. Andrew Rourke Getty's mom, Ann Gilbert Getty, or Ann, formerly Gilbert, then Getty, not to be confused with Ann Rourke Getty, who was his mom. That he's named for. I would assume, his middle name, Rourke, is a reference to her last name. But she was a paleoanthropologist who was super active as a patron of the arts and a patron of the sciences and things. And particularly, and I think you can see that interest as well in the other Gettys, especially, in Andrew. You can see he owned a dinosaur skeleton that you can see in the movie at one point, weirdly. That's very odd. Yeah. Well,
he owns a dinosaur skeleton.
We'll talk about it. But yeah, so there's all this interest in paleontology and things like that. And even as Ed brought up in our episode, they have this huge kind of collection of unicorn stuff at the Getty Museum. Yeah, that also. It's weird, and really the whole interest, I was reading that Gordon Getty, the father of Andrew Getty, he was super into classical music and things, and he created operas around all sorts of these weird kind of similarly gothic subjects, like the fall of the House of Usher. He wrote an opera around, I think called Usher House, and he did one on the Canterville Ghost by Oscar Wilde, famous Golden Dawn associated person, which is another weird thing. And he did a libretto based on Joan of Arc called Joan and the Bells. So he chose interesting topics that are kind of in the same universe as thematically as the evil within. Yes. And I just want to state for the record, because I did a little sus check, and I'm looking at San Francisco Chronicle, a photo from 1991, and is a picture of a cool looking young Gavin Newsom, Paul Moen,
Billy Getty and Andrew Getty posing for a, quote, Children of the Rich feature that ran in the San Francisco Chronicle on December 12th, 1991. So they're right next to each other, and they were born in the same year. So actually, they might have been classmates in school together. Like, they must have been good friends, clearly. Children of the Rich right here. So we're talking about, like a friend of the governor, a close family friend of the governor of California directed this movie. Like, this fucking movie. You know what I mean? Like, this movie.
Which is, yes. Yeah, it's
wild.
It's quite wild. He was super plugged in. He was like friends with all these people he would be traveling around. But he died before the movie could be released. And the producer, it was funny because I was reading some comments by the producer, Michael Luceri, who finished the movie. And he was like, wow, after he died, I was so surprised to hear everyone saying, like, oh, he was an asshole, he was a cokehead, he seemed like a nice guy to me. And so he was like, I need to finish this movie, like, to honor him or something. It's like, well, I feel like it would be better if this movie never came out. Like, if you want to, like, convince people that he's, like, a good guy and, like, honor his memory, like, you should have, like, not finished the movie. Like, you should have just let it be buried and never.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think the review in Birth Movie's Death, it's interesting that this has 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, because only
there's like five
obscure
reviews.
blogs. But the Birth Movie's Death one said, like, really, like, to call this a vanity project is really kind of missing the point, because, like, if it was vanity that he was after, he really should have never released this movie. Like, it's a rare thing of, like, a vanity project of, like, a wealthy guy like this ends up making him look like worse in but like he successfully like achieves his goal of depicting a vision that he wants to achieve, but it's not like a good one that like reflects well on him. You know what I mean? Like it
seems like whoever made this movie has serious problems. And
demons, you might say. They have serious demons.
They definitely have demons, and it's a movie that radiates true. It's not like a fun horror romp, it's not like going to see, I don't know, Drag Me to Hell or Evil Dead, where it's like, okay, the person who made this is still like a normally socialized person who's like trying to give us like spooky fun or something,
they just love old grindhouse schlocky stuff.
It's not even like seeing Rosemary's Baby, where you're like, okay, the person who made this is kind of maybe like a bit worrisome to me, but like maybe this is just a complex artist who's trying to make some kind of point about like our deep-seated fears and the paranoias that we have as we go through our lives and the repression and things like that. This is like, the person who made this is like truly sick. Like, this is just, it's kind of like a mix of like the impression of depravity that you get from like some of Polanski's movies, especially like, maybe you kind of have to know who Polanski is first, and then you sort of see those aspects in his movies, whereas you might give him the benefit of the doubt otherwise. But this, like, even if you didn't know who made it, you'd be like, this person's sick. It's kind of like a Tommy Wiseau like Room type thing where you're.
I was thinking that this is very similar to The Room in certain ways, though. I kind of went into it a little bit like I was surprised pretty quickly when I watched this, because the way to the extent people had written about it, it did kind of sound like, oh my god, like one of the Getty dudes went off and made this kind of Room thing that he sunk like millions of dollars of his own money into, but. It's like it's not like a haha, look how bad this is. It didn't really hit me on that level. Like, there are aspects of it that are kind of like
there are aspects of it that are absurd. Yeah, exactly. But the similarity with The Room, I would say, is that it's deeply personal, and you definitely get the sense that this is like a very singular expression of artistic expression by the person who made this. And in both cases, it's not flattering, but The Room is actually more flattering than this because you kind of get the sense Tommy Wiseau is pathetic, crucially lacking self-awareness. But with this, you're like, this guy's like fucked up. He, and it reflects poorly on like the entire Getty family. You might have a negative opinion of them anyway, but you don't get a good picture of like the family environment that this kid grew up in, or like his mental guy.
Don't.
He was like 47 when he died.
Yeah, exactly. And but it does have a certain. He did put a lot of money into it.
Better made than The Room production wise. There are some interesting shots. Weird sort of like tracking shots through like hamster habit trails, because that's a weird like plot element in the movie. Yeah, it's definitely glossier and better made than The Room. I think
and especially I also didn't realize, because this movie did get finally released on streaming services kind of quietly in 2017. And when I was first watching it, I actually thought that it was probably made in like the early 2010s. But then, you go back and read, and most of it actually, huge chunks of it were shot in like probably 2002 or 2003. And I guess there were rumors at the time of just like a lot of crazy shit happening on set and stuff, kind of in the tabloids. And, so like watching it, there's a lot of things in this movie that you're like, okay, like that would be an absolutely bonkers decision that nobody would make. Say to have a heavily like mentally handicapped main character acting the way that they are in this film.
Yes.
But if you think about it, where it was being done in 2002, there's almost been kind of a thing in our culture lately of like going back to early 2000s comedies and just being like, ooh, yikes.
It's true. Like the fact that like it's really not that, like Sia recently made a movie, right, where the main character is like played by Maddie Ziegler from her, music video Shia LaBeouf. The one that you've mentioned before. And she plays like an autistic girl or something, or someone who has to care for an autistic girl, and the autistic girl is like, she understands music better or whatever. It's like some kind of classical like autistic person as plot device thing. Or like you would see one of our favorite like awful network shows, Flash Forward, where like all the there was like an autistic kid who would just be like 526, the blackout is coming, like like they like have special powers, like that type of stuff was like pretty normal for a really long time. Since this movie really is like 15 years old, despite coming out when it did, it's not surprising that like it really isn't that weird, like in terms of the horror genre, to have like negative depiction of like a mentally disabled person. For like
and given everything else, given everything else in that movie, like that worry kind of like receded after a while, because there's so much more fucked up shit happening in this movie that it's kind of like, well, okay, like this is how you want to tell it. And
right, my girlfriend was watching it, she was like, isn't this movie canceled because this is like a non-disabled actor like playing a disabled character? And I'm like, I feel like this movie is just like canceled like so many times over for like entirely different things before that. Like
throughout the entire thing, really, it does accomplish a goal.
It's sick. It's insane. It's
absolutely insane.
It's sick. It's sick. And it's sick.
It is. It's sicko. It's a sicko fucking movie. It's a real.
It really is a sicko movie, and it's much more just like I am someone who enjoys horror movies, because they deal a lot of the time with themes that are related to our areas of interest that we explore in the show often. The religious domain, the death, life, the idea of another world, a world beyond that of the senses, etc. Like a lot of these themes are very often explored in horror movies. The idea of God, the idea of Satan, etc. Good, evil. Horror often deals with those concepts. So like have seen a lot of these movies, and this movie is more disturbing, like by far, than your average horror movie. Like this isn't like Annabelle Comes Home or whatever. This is like a really disturbing movie.
I think it's. I would even say, people have been disturbed by like Hereditary and Midsommar. I think it's not. I wouldn't say it's like a better made movie, but it's more disturbing.
It's not. It's much more disturbing. Correct. Yes, Hereditary is a much better movie, and there are shots in Hereditary that were disturbing to me, particularly. I think there's one shot in Hereditary that is a very memorable one. But there are also shots in this movie that will not leave me for a while, that I will remember.
Absolutely. Yes. I mean, should we? I don't know. So, like, I mean, should we get into it? Should we just get into it?
Let's get into it.
A dream is a story I tell myself, right? Yeah. Yeah, that's a good way of saying it, I guess.
Well, if it's a story I tell me, how can I trick myself?
You think someone else is telling you these stories?
It has to be.
Someone like...
I control your dreams. I can handle the nightmares. You haven't yet had a nightmare.
What are you hiding? Why are you lying?
We have to stop the nightmares. We have to fix our brain.
Oh, wow. Bad dreams, buddy?
How can you stay awake all night? Mirror I hate, and I'm gonna break the mirror right now. Hey, John!
There's a crime in progress.
When you're sleeping at night, I'm the one who whispers in your ear.
For access to the full-length episode, subscribe to the Hour of Frequency at patreon.com/subliminal jihad.